that's the level of focus that it takes to make something good, to do something great, to learn something, to feed yourself good inspiration, to nail a skill, to be brave and to be bold and to deal with all distractions and just get out there and go, shit, I'm doing it. This is my good thing.
Hello everybody and welcome to Show Love episode 12. My name is Ben, I'll be your host, and joining me here in my lounge is the amazing, the incredible denim connoisseur that is Si Moore.
Connoisseur.
Thanks for joining me, man.
Connoisseur of the indigo arts. Yeah, good to be here in your very fine lounge room.
Thank you very much. Thanks for joining me, man. I
did notice there's some pretty good trolley here as well.
A little tea trolley, a little bit of eclectic furniture. We don't really have the most solidified furniture style, but it does the job.
No, there's some themes emerging. There's some strong themes emerging. Brown is a strong theme. I am a fan of brown.
Brown and blue.
Yeah, good browns.
Yeah.
Good colour palette.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Today we've got you on the show, which I'm sure a lot of people.
It's such a great phrase, eh? Got you on the show.
On the show, yeah.
The show.
Joining me, but I feel a little bit like Zach Galifianakis, like in between two ferns.
Can you imagine doing this with a live studio audience?
Fuck no.
It's like, oh my goodness.
This anxiety would just like crash over me. I mean, it already is, but that's right. We push through.
Surf the wave.
We do indeed surf the wave.
Hey, is this the pandemic edition?
Or
by the time this comes out, the pandemic might be over. Hopefully, yeah.
This is actually like our obituary.
Yeah, we're deep in pandemic at the moment.
Yeah. We're currently recording this. By the time this comes out, it'll be a month after recording this. So we're deep in...
we're in panic mode. We're deep in panic mode.
We're deep in coronavirus wedding cancellation panic
We've closed the borders. The emails are flowing about 3 a minute with level of panic. Yeah. But it's going to be fine.
Yeah.
That's not based on... That reassurance is not based on any kind of fact. Yeah. Just in case. It's kind of like a level of mum when your mum says it's going to be fine. You know? You come home from that first day of school where you've just had you've had a shocker. It's like, it's going to be fine. And you're like, oh, it's going to be fine. And then 10 years later you realise, my mum didn't know anything about why it was going to be fine.
Yeah, just trying to calm you down.
Sorry, off the track.
It's fine. I feel like it's right.
We need to acknowledge this pandemic.
We do indeed, because it is affecting a lot of people, and it'll actually be interesting to see where it is a month from now, and see how that all turns out. But today I thought it would be great just sit down and chat with you, which I'm sure a lot of people watching and listening will be very excited about, basically to chat through just how you've developed your style, your aesthetic, all the different influences that have come together to create Bailey & Moore now. So I guess kind of to start us off, do you want to give us a little bit of insight into your early inspirations? I know you've come from the music world.
The early days.
Yeah, the early days.
The early days.
Yeah.
My blue period. No, I'm still
transition that is like...
Yeah, I think like I had, but so Sophia, like my wife and business partner, life partner, she's the Bailey to my Moore. We both came from like different creative disciplines. So she'd been a designer, working in ad agencies and stuff like that and doing visual stuff like for a long time. I've been like playing music for a long time, long time. And we'd both kind of got our process down in both of those things, figured out what you're on about, figured out what you're doing, figure out how it works. You just figure out the recipes of how you make good work and all that sort of stuff you do. And then when we met, we kind of both jumped from our respective creative disciplines, like into the photography game, and so we brought with us all the processes that are kind of involved with those two separate things. And I think anyone who's sort of jumped categories or gone across into a new creative thing, you suddenly go, holy shit, same rules. It works. It's the same thing, So if you've done, I don't know if you're subscribed to that Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours thing, but there's definitely a lot of truth in the fact that after a while of doing X amount of stuff, you start to figure out a really strong process that works really well, and you can start to apply all the same kind of rules to every project to go, that's basically what confidence is. Confidence is going, I know I can show up today, and I know that I've got a process that means that I'll get pretty close to the same result every time. We just applied that to photography, and sort of like moved forward pretty solidly. I think one of the things that I've always been aware of making music is that you're the sum of the stuff that you listen to, and there's a great story I always tell about like making a record with like a really great Welsh producer, and we were sort of setting up, doing stuff in the studio for the first day or whatever, all the normal sort of set up stuff, and he's this young kid who's the artist, who's from a major label, and sort of to put him off, like Greg, the producer, is just like legend in his broad Welsh accent, which I won't try and do, was just like, maybe go away and sort of find us like 3 records that you've been listening to that have kind of really informed the songs you've written, that you kind of want this to sound like. Really just kind of being like, we're just getting some stuff done over here, can you just go to this thing? And this kid comes back with, I remember like one of them was Coldplay, and I remember us all being a bunch of people who just play on records for a living, were just all shocked. We're just like, oh my goodness, please don't let this be what it is. We were like, what are you doing, Greg? Asking him to bring in a Coldplay record. And then Haver's just like, why don't you do like tomorrow? Why don't you bring in, have a look at who these guys were listening to when they made this record, and bring in 3 records they were listening to. And this kid's like, well, it seems pointless, but he does it, Anyway, like, and the process goes on for a few days. Yeah. And then eventually this kid's like discovering like, Miles Davis and Howling Wolf, and, like some real classic 50s magic. Yeah. That was really potent, like really like almost, is this listenable? What is this? This is some batshit crazy stuff recorded around one mic in the middle of Mississippi, and whatever. And that's the stage where it was just like, oh shit, we can do something with this. Like this is some inspiration that we can work with. And it was just a really good lesson to just go, that whatever you're looking at or whatever you're using to feed yourself or inspire you, like there's some building blocks somewhere deep in there that you might as well get in touch with the rawest of the building blocks, like you see people like I always talk about William Eggleston, who's fantastic American photographer from like the golden era of like sort of 60s-ish, pioneer of color photography and a color style and composition style, which has informed a huge amount of cinematographers. Like he's like his color like obviously most of his stuff he's shot in landscape, which then if you're making films you go like, okay, well it's easy to reference, but his color style and how he would like craft his color palette, like 2 or 3 color palette, massively informed everyone from like Kubrick through to like Christopher Nolan, and everyone in between. And so when people talk about a cinematic look, often they feel like they're talking about they think they're talking about a composition style or just a 2.35 to 1 or something like that. But in fact, if like eventually somewhere in all the people that they're referencing, William Eggleston will be a source. And it turns out that when they say cinematic, they're talking about this limited color palette, which straight away makes it feel like a film. And so it's like if you realize that like your favorite filmmaker or your favorite photographer, if you go back a couple of layers, that William Eggleston is at the source, just go straight to him. Feed yourself the most potent thing rather than having it pulled back through someone else. It's kind of like if you're making a record, eventually you end up listening to the Beatles. Just go listen, just start out with John Lennon, just go listen to and it's like, often you'll hear people reference a lot of these legacy names and these incredible, because the 20th century or the last half of the 20th century was this insane visual, what's a ridiculous word for a feast? Cornucopia. Like is the cornucopia, is that kind of like the crazy horn with the stuff coming out of it, like the pastry horn with it? A cornucopia of remarkable stuff, like the onset of movies, the onset of films, like the onset of like the photographic game, all of these things, these people pioneering this crazy shit. But also at the same time, the last half of the 20th century was this insane time for music as well, where you get the electrification of music, and you get people doing stuff and making sounds that they could never have made before. And so all the songwriting and all the visual storytelling in that last half of the 20th century just was ramped up to 11. And so I think, I don't know, how do we get onto this? No, I think like a key thing of like what Soph and I, when we were starting Bailey and Moore and doing Bailey and Moore, was just going, we just need to feed ourselves some good stuff, and we didn't want to feed ourselves wedding industry stuff. Not that there was anything wrong with it, but we just got more of a buzz out of beautiful classic stuff that we were like, holy shit, look at this. Whether it's old National Geographics, like I discovered this crazy 1974 National Geographic at our Airbnb where we were staying on the weekend for a wedding. Some guy, Sam Abel, shooting this story about Newfoundland, and you sort of open the first double page spread of the story where it's just this beautiful photo of these two fishermen and then just the credits, and you were just like, this might be the greatest thing I've seen in 10 years. Who is this guy? Like, and I'm stealing this National Geographic, like it's not staying here. Like, I don't know, yeah. All of these things, I think it's just worth looking at. I guess what I'm saying, this is a long form way of saying, you are what you eat. Like, without a doubt. Like, what you put into yourself is what you're going to get out, and your creative diet is key to making good stuff. Yeah. And so, I think monitoring that, it's like the more mature you get as an artist, the more mature you get as, even as a business person, whatever it is that you're doing, I think you start to feed off different stuff, you start to go, shit, this level of stuff that used to satisfy me, now I need to know what's behind it more. And you go another layer deep and another layer deep. And you always end up in the same place, You always end up at some of the people who change the visual game, incredible filmmakers or incredible photographers or all that sort of stuff. But I think right from the start we've really wanted to feed ourselves good stuff.
Do you feel like most people don't go that extra layer deep?
I think it's a matter of time as well. I think one of the key things in any creative discipline is you've got to plot and plan what you need to do to stay in the game for long enough to get good. And eventually, if you stay doing what you're doing for long enough, you will, like if you're just discovering, let's say you walked into a cinema and you'd never seen a movie before, right? And you went to the movies right now and you saw, I don't know, what would you see? A Marvel film or something, whatever, right? And you'd be like, whoa, holy shit, there's a massive screen and there's like crazy stuff moving and these things exploding, this is wild. But after about 2 months of watching Marvel films, you'd be like, wonder if there's any other kinds of films. And you go a little bit deeper and you go a little bit deeper and you go a little bit deeper, And you skim back 10 years and you find you're watching, There'll Be Blood or like Deakins' No Country for Old Men. And you're like, holy shit, this stuff's like... And then it's like, wait a sec, what if I go back another 10 years? Yeah. Terrible period, so don't go back 20 years. But yeah, I think it's just a matter of time in the game to peel the layers back and suddenly discover like a whole bunch more inspiration. And when you finally get to that really potent level of the masters or the people who changed the game or the people who invented a way of doing things or whatever, it completely changes you. You've just got to stay in the game long enough to get that inspiration to make something good. And I think it's like, I remember when I moved on from discovering, seeing a certain kind of light, seeing light in a certain way, loving super directional light, and how people used it, to then going to moving beyond looking at photographic stuff and films to being like, holy shit, like people were doing this in the golden age, like the Dutch masters, and then going from that to going from Rembrandt to like Caravaggio, and being like, holy, who's this guy? Like, what the hell, going to galleries like in Europe and like hunting down every Caravaggio you could find to be just like, this is a level of mastery. And then you go, oh, I see what, Dorothea Lange was doing, or I see where William Eggleston was copying this thing from, or I see what Stephen Shaw was trying to do. So all of that the people who are like legacy photographic people or visual people were referencing this way earlier game from a whole different discipline. But yeah, then also saying, you cross all these lines. You see people like Stephen Shaw referencing, like Mies van der Rohe and some of these fantastic architects about the use of light and shape and line and everything. And you suddenly realize that if hey, pick your stream, steer your boat down whichever stream you want, and you're going to find some really potent raw stuff. So long as it's at that level, so long as it's not Instagram, so long as you're actively curating and actively feeding yourself to figure out, to be building yourself into what you want to do and what you want to make, not just like, I'll let an algorithm build me, you turn into a terrible thing, That's,
interesting. Yeah.
How do we get? I mean, all of this stuff is just like, you're the result of what you put into yourself.
Yeah.
And I think it's
because I have a very bad habit of doing that algorithm bouncing thing, where I'll use things like Instagram or Pinterest to do exploring, and I can find some cool stuff, but it does feel more shallow than.
There is so much cool stuff. I think that's the thing, is that the problem is not this is shit, but the problem is like this is too great. There's so much cool stuff, and we live in this age where you carry this device around with you. Which is basically a Facebook product delivery vehicle. Was there something like 80% of the data fed to mobile devices is delivering a Facebook product? And they have this huge, massive amount of people who are just building things to keep you in it. So it's not like, whoa, you're an idiot because you look at it's like, this whole business is built around this stuff. But there's a huge amount of incredibly beautiful stuff that people are making, but the problem is that you just get fed it like you're standing underneath a waterfall. It's like someone described to me once. It's like you're a water quality scientist wanting to investigate water at a molecular level, and you're standing under a waterfall with a test tube. Being like, is this the bit? What about this? What about It's just you get out of the fucking waterfall. Yeah, but I think too, it's like once you take control of your diet to just go, you know what, like I've thought about the kind of work that I want to make, and I've thought about the kind of work that forms me into the artist that I want to be, and it's this kind of work. So I'm going to distance myself from all this other stuff and just go deep on this. It might be super directional light like I love, or it might be line and shape and like that, like crazy architectural stuff. So you look at that certain kind of stuff and just really focus in on that kind of thing, and then feed yourself more and more and more and more of it. I think the rule is that the more potent your diet is, the better the result will be. The more concentrated and potent it is about a certain thing, the more that will get into you, and you'll end up making something. And I think, like, as a rule, you will water down whatever you're looking at, or whatever you're listening to, if it's music or whatever whatever your inspiration is, you'll water it down and you'll kind of make it a bit shit. So it's just a natural human kind of vibe. Even if you try and rip something off perfectly, you're never necessarily going to make it better. You're always going to make it worse. So what it means is you need to feed yourself stuff which is like the opposite of bland, which is brutally on the edge, very potent, very challenging. I mean, there's a documentary making rule, which is like, if you want to change other people's minds, you have to have your mind changed in the process, So if you're making a documentary and about a certain issue or a subject, and you've already decided what the facts are and what it is before you start, that's just called preaching. But if you go into a thing to investigate and you have your mind changed in the process of making it, guarantee that the thing you make will change other people's minds, because you've already gone through that experience of going, this was so potent that it changed how I thought and felt about this issue when I thought it was like this. And in the same way with creative stuff, you have to feed yourself stuff which is so potent that you're kind of like, I'm not sure how I feel about this, or I'm not sure if this is great or if this is bad, or that you're at that level, not back at this. That's kind of like that's like, Howlin' Wolf and Lead Belly in a music sense versus Chris Martin, versus Coldplay, where it's just like, well, this stuff is like absolutely wild. This wasn't made for consumption. Who knows why they made this? What are they even singing about? This is this is some pretty incredible stuff. I think you just have to keep it really potent. And it's really easy when you do what we do, when you're like running a small business, you're a creative who's kind of like trying to, you're not plugged into this massive, larger thing. You have to create this world that you're making stuff in. It's really easy to get distracted and forget to feed yourself really potent stuff, but just doing the basic thing of plotting out and planning what's my creative diet and being like, okay, I know I live in a world that's got all these algorithms feeding me stuff. I can't avoid it. I'm going to be part of it. But also I know that like I'm going to feed myself inspirational content in this way, or get it from this, or it's going to be this thing, or this year I'm only about this person's work. So you buy yourself 5 like photo books that has their history and their work in, and that's the place where you go when you're sitting down with your morning coffee, like in the morning sun at the table. You're like, this is my hour of inspiration where I know the stuff I'm feeding myself now I take seriously and I examine it, but the stuff that when I'm scrolling on the phone I know it's just for kicks. So you're just basically saying I'm going to give myself a deliberate diet.
Because there's something about removing the distraction and focusing, right? I mean, it's like you were saying with the waterfall analogy. It's like you just having that intentional focus on a very specific thing to try and extract something out of it.
And it's very easy, like back to the waterfall analogy, it would be very easy if you were a water quality scientist, that you're standing under a waterfall trying to get a sample and you think because you're wet you're doing the job because you're about water, but you're not. Your job is to like examine this shit, and I think that's what it feels like if you're a creative person and you're having all of this incredible, beautiful work rained on you constantly. You think, well, I'm around it. This must be good for me, but it's probably not, because what's good for you is going, how do I make something that only I can make? What do I feed myself this bunch of stuff that I have an output, which one makes my audience feel something. Gives them a thing that they can't get from anywhere else, brings them alive, makes them whatever. But 2, makes me feel satisfied, like I'm doing something good with my life. And means that it's, you're not just regurgitating the same old, but you're just like, whoa, like I'm making something good, There's a crazy saying, it comes from the architecture world, which is like, you can only make 3 good things in your life. And it's pretty confronting. And I've had people just argue with me hard about that until they suddenly starts to go, wait a second, actually, maybe. You can probably make 3 good things, do 3 good things, in your life. And the older you get before you realize that, you're probably down to 2. But it's just, that's the level of focus that it takes to make something good, to do something great, to learn something, to feed yourself good inspiration, to nail a skill. To be brave and to be bold and to deal with all distractions and just get out there and go, shit, I'm doing it. This is my good thing. This is my situation, especially in the world that we live in right now, which is just constantly chock full of distractions,
And so was there a point as you...
Oh, we're back to the history. Yeah, I keep forgetting.
No. I was say,
it's good.
No, this is incredible. I'm super stoked. But I guess because like obviously feeding yourself like the right diet, the right creative diet is incredibly important, and surrounding yourself constantly with it and working constantly on your craft. Like you mentioned the 10,000 hours thing. Was there a point that you felt like, cool, I get it, or has it just been a kind of constant like growth?
There's a kind of thing. I mean, the biggest thing about that diet, the biggest part of your diet is people, like without doubt. They're the ones who open new doors to to new stuff. And I think that's the thing, is that once you feel like you've got a thing down, and you just go, oh shit, I think I finally understand this. And you'll meet someone, or someone, like we're so lucky to have this incredible crew of beautiful friends, like Ollie Sansom, like Cassie Sullivan, like and that we've tripped around the world with and done crazy things, like Ryan and Heidi in New York, the Fortune of the North crew, like and we've kind of we've been on mental month-long road trips with each other and thrashed out things on our couch late at night in front of the fire, and you know, and we've got this beautiful collection of people who are happy to engage with this stuff and talk about it and be like, shit, look at this, you know, or like, you know, like I'll get a text from like, you know, like Danelle Bohane, or like, or Ollie, or like Joel Alston or someone, and it's just like it's a photo of it, like that Nat Geo that I found, like a photo of a thing in a place or a thing in a gallery where, you know, Ollie will just send me this video of this strange thing, and then all he says is just like fuck or mate, M with 1,008, you know, and you don't hear from him for 3 months, and then suddenly you get this like torrent of stuff, and I'm just like, what? And he's like, what? And you're like, shit, I thought we were getting somewhere. And we just realised that we're getting nowhere. What is this? This is like heartbreakingly amazing, but what? So I think that's the thing, is it moves ahead and stops and starts, but it's always the people that you put around yourself who just, because, you know, you put your head down and you're doing your thing, and it takes someone who knows you, your crew who knows you really well, who can just be like, show up one day, like Cassie's classic, we should just sit in the corner quietly forever, and then she'll speak up at one point and just be like, you know what, I think it all might be bullshit, like this is really what, you know, it's like, it's easy for someone like me who can develop an opinion on anything instantly, usually wrong, and you know, like that you just get sailing away, that to make sure that you surround yourself with people who will at some stage just be like, what are you talking about, like that's like ridiculous.
I saw I don't know when or where or what, but I saw some Instagram story where I was just like, out of the blue, it was just like halfway through one of your sentences, and you were just like, you know what, I'm gonna call bullshit on banana bread. It's just cake.
Yeah, it is just cake. Like, it's not bread. Yeah. It's like a loaf. Yeah. And it's like, it's full of sugar and butter, and it's absolutely delicious. But like, it's not bread, guys. It's a muffin reshaped into like it's like a larger muffin. And it's like, I'm all for it. But I just, you know, now we're changing on to baking things. While we're on it, no. Like, is a ham and cheese croissant, can you say croissant? I think if it's got ham and cheese in it, you have to say croissant.
Probably.
Yeah, good meeting.
Yeah. I'm trying to open my damn phone with the Face ID to get my next set of questions up. I guess.
I mean, you know, before you get to the next thing, like the people thing is so important. Like we have, when we started the wedding industry, you know, like 11 years ago, the wedding industry was very different to how it is now. And I think one of the beautiful things about social media game is that it's brought, I mean, there's a lot of evils, it's hard to know, it probably balances out, but one of the beautiful things is that it's brought people close together around the world. You can have these wonderful relationships with people, and then you can meet them in person when you're, you know, at a conference or you're somewhere, and you're just like, yo, this thing's worked, it's brought us together. That's when it works really well. Like, that's amazing. But we're lucky enough to have just had, you know, when we were starting, we didn't really have anyone to help us out, and so we were just like, shit, we slowly were like, when people would ask for help, or they would be coming through New Zealand and need some place to stay, we'd be like, just stay with us. Like, and it ends up being this amazing mix of very different people you've got through your house all the time, and you're just having yarns on the couch about stuff and figuring out what you think about things and being exposed to different situations and different stuff. And having wonderful people around you is everything. That is it. Like, the things that change you will not be something you read on someone's Instagram stories, apart from banana bread. That's key. Or it won't be something that you hunted out yourself, because you don't know what's going to change you to hunt it out. You're not going to feed yourself that. Someone else has to show up in your world to be like, yo, look at this, like, frick. And I think we've really enjoyed being able to be that for some people as well, to pass it on, to be like, this, we discovered this thing, and this was like benchmark, like, here, you know, like, here, discover either the same thing or like something else, or who knows what, you know.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing I would love to chat about, is the idea of sharing. And because I think a lot of people fall into the trap of, they find a cool thing and they want to hoard it.
Or defensive creatives are this is one of my favorite lols. Yeah. It's just like, because what it does is I mean, it's like that idea that you think that from inspirational stuff, that we honestly want to think that we're magic. Yeah. And it's a very natural human thing to want, like, lots of the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, basically revolve around the same narrative, which is like, I'm very special.
Yeah.
And which is cool if you're 5, but one day you have to wake up and just be like, I might not be special, like, or I might not be magic, which can be quite a shock if you've like fed yourself the Kool-Aid that you're super special in magic. And I think you think that the stuff that you're making came from you, not that you are the sum of your parts, or that you saw someone else's idea and you produced a thing that was probably worse, that you watered it down. No one wants to hear that, but it's true. But like it's, I can't even remember what we're fucking talking about. It's so onto the Kool-Aid magic of like pretending that you're special. No, I think once you can be honest with yourself to go, you know what, like I'm the sum of a bunch of things, and all of that knowledge is out there, and I can't hoard it. I can't keep it from anyone. Like, and I could give this knowledge to someone else, and they'll do a completely different thing with it. That's a super healthy place to be. Like, because what it says is it's you acknowledging that like you have a very individual take on the world, and someone else does too. And probably the first iteration of what someone will do with anything you share with them will be pretty similar to what you do. But really quickly, if you've got good friends, if you've got good people around you, they're just going to take it off into another thing. And I like heaps of the workshop stuff that we do, the kind of pact that and even mentors things and stuff like that, which I hate the mentors. I like, it's really just hanging out with someone, sharing some knowledge. And I always just kind of have this pact with people of being like, hey, like in 5 years time, like you have to do something so great with whatever we're talking about that in 5 years time I'm knocking on your door and you need to be kind to me and show me what you know, because like you just need to change gears on this shit and take it way more places than we could ever take it. And I think that's a healthy place to be, is to think that like like if you're younger, I think it's vital to remember that whatever you do, you're going to be standing on the shoulders of some people who came before you, whether that's the most recent people or whether that's legacy crazy, whether it's Caravaggio, but you're standing on shoulders of people who've done a lot of hard work before you. And I think if you're older, your job is to build strong shoulders so that people can stand on them. And a lot of that is just being like, just get over your fucking self. Like you're not magic, you've absorbed this amazing stuff for years, and pass it on and share it with other people, and they'll do something incredible with it. And just hope that, and keep those people close to you, because when they do something incredible with it, you're going to go back to them and be like, holy shit, I never would have thought. How did you do that? But it takes a level of being comfortable with your ego that you don't need to be. I mean, this brings me on to my great passionate thing. Like if you're a creative and if you're making art, you should absolutely fundamentally think that hierarchies are bullshit. Like, because art is by nature, art is an anti-authoritarian thing that says that you can say to a bunch of people, you're a voice for society, for like all the 95% of other people who don't have a voice, or who are, who stop feeling because they've been squashed down by this whole process of education and corporate life and whatever it is they're doing, But you have a really potent voice, and art should be anti-authoritarian. It should be in some ways just saying, no, fuck you. Like, this is what you should think, and this is what you should feel, and this is what you should, and like you should naturally be putting information out into other artists that cause them to like want to punch you, that cause them to just like, there should be this vibe where the revolution goes on and on and on and on. And if you're putting out information to people, which means that you are still the peak of this hierarchy, you've failed. Like, that's not how art works. But the way that a lot of these things in most creative industries work, how people make their money is status, and is where they sit on this thing. Even just the simple thing of like a photo conference, someone needs to sell tickets, so they need to make someone else feel like they are lesser than you, that you're further up the hierarchy, so they buy a ticket to come hear about your magic, hoping that they can move up the thing. So you sort of almost already have to live in that world. But then you show up at the thing and you're just like, this is bullshit. Everyone in this room can make world-class work on their day. And hopefully what we're on about is helping you to increase your consistency, or to just be like, just go way off into another thing. It's thinking about the point of an artist in society is a really vital discussion to have with yourself, I think.
Yeah. I think the whole because I totally hear you on the art being anti-authoritarian. I'm interested to see.
We've got full art, eh? We've just gone full art.
Well, I'm all about. My wife's got a master's in art history, so we talk art all the time. But the idea of that anti-authoritarian attitude and how it relates to weddings, because weddings are squishy, lovey, emotional things. Like, how are you taking that anti-authoritarian attitude of telling people this is how you feel and this is what you should do?
I think it's more that stuff of like how art works, you know, and how artists work and how you operate. In some ways, it's just giving yourself permission to go, lots of these things that I feel about how you make stuff come from this. This is the building blocks of making this stuff. And so, you know, when you get to the making, it should be sort of like pretty natural. I mean, people, whatever you're making is, I think weddings get a bad name because of the W word. We always just talk about being people in love, you know. And people in love are crazy, potent creatures who are wild, batshit crazy, doing a once in a lifetime thing, surrounded by families that are broken or whole, you know, surrounded by friends who are mad or wonderful, surrounded by it's a human panoply of everything you could imagine that you love about, you know, looking back at any document, any image, photographic document, or any era of history, like whether it's like the whatever it's Farm Security Administration stuff, like Oklahoma, or that like Walker Evans, Dorothea Lange, that era, which is, what is that, pre-World War II, like John Steinbeck novelist era, like the 30s, I guess, when there's a massive drought in the middle of the US and everyone moves to California and all these families are just trapped like dirt poor. Like the US government set up the Farm Security Administration to try and deal with this mass migration of super poor people. And they sent out photographers to document it. And those photographers turned out to be some of, like, to make this work. And it was at the very birth of photography. So they sent out these men and women to shoot this stuff that is still the benchmark documentary stuff today. And you look at that stuff and you're just like, holy shit, like, look at, like, because they had this level of access at a government level, and they were doing this craft that no one knew what they were doing. You can walk into like a shack with a bunch of, like, you know, 3 sick kids and parents with rags falling off them. There's no food and the fucking dust storms blowing through it. And they're just glad someone's there. No one was just like, oh, you've got a camera, you know. It's just like, what's a camera? Yeah. And they made this incredible work. You can either look at that's potent human stuff, or you can look at like the 60s in San Francisco, you know, and this wild like counterculture thing going on where everything's batshit crazy, and the people who documented that, you know, and that's like even like the early Annie Leibovitz stuff of like documenting the music industry around that time, you know, she goes on tour with the Rolling Stones and the Altamont Speedway stuff with the Hells Angels and everything. Like, that's potent, insane, crazy shit, you know. But yeah, like, you can look at all these periods of history and see this crazy, potent human interaction. And what you're looking at is you're looking at the stuff that we look at on a wedding day. You're looking at crazy relationships. You're looking at mad, batshit crazy love against all odds, often. You're looking at people spending a crazy amount of money sometimes or no money at all. You're looking at people who just made stuff happen because they were in love. And then you're looking at the families who made them who they are. And you have this wild access to these people that they want you there and they want you to tell their story. And if you've got even a bone of empathy in your body, you can figure out how to be in the room with people and how to feel it with them and how to document it with them and be in the right place at the right time. Because the gift you've got when you do this stuff, in the same way as, like, say, King Leibovitz being on tour with the Rolling Stones, is that you know night after night or day after day what happens in the room, and you know where you have to be, and you know it more than everyone else in the room knows it. You know that, like, in 2 hours, that grumpy dude there who doesn't quite know how to deal with his daughter getting married is going to transform into this tearful, crazy, caught up in the moment dude over here. And you know that it's going to happen. And you know then that you have to be from here to there. And that if you're there at this moment, you are going to document this magic thing, this magic transformation of this person that only happens once in their life. And so I think that's a lot of all the same countercultural, anti-authoritarian making art rules that apply to any time people make things about the human condition apply to you. I don't even know if that answers your question.
No, it does.
I mean, lots of that art, how art works stuff is just about figuring out who you are and why you're making. And then after that, once you can answer those questions for yourself, after that, the what you're making just works out, you know. A bit of a rant.
That was very soundbite. That was great.
Yeah,
I love it.
Meanwhile, outside the doors, the pandemic is going on. People are looting.
Just fuck, man. You're so good. You just go off on these tangents. I struggle to keep up, but it's incredible. My mind is just going a million miles a minute. I want to take what you just said there around, I guess, observing the day and I guess telling those stories and hone in on that word storytelling as like a bit of a buzzword, but because it's this sort of skill that people often say they are a storyteller, and I guess like that word storytelling, like, I guess what is your opinion on that and how it relates to our work?
Oh man, it's hard to put this. It's such an overused, horrible.
It is. Buzzword. It is a horrible word.
But it's like yeah. People who have shot beautiful things about the human condition are, I feel like they're not storytellers, but they're very good, empathetic. They're good at being invisible in the room, and when often they're the largest feature because they're the person who doesn't belong, you know. Yeah, like who's this? Mental blank. Aaron Huey. So at Workshop, which is like a workshop that our friends ran in New York for a few years, and it's kind of on pause at the moment. The first year that we were there with them, you know, like a wonderful lineup of but people from the wedding industry mostly, and but there were a couple of Ryan has always sort of got a couple of people to come who are just like benchmark visual storytellers. So you've got this big crowd of people attending this workshop who are mostly wedding industry people, and they're attending it for the wedding industry people who are a bit further up the game, you know, or who have been in it longer, who are there. And then the people who are there from the wedding industry speaking are attending it for these two people who are outside of the wedding industry, who they just want to be around. So that's kind of this crazy thing. One year like Aaron Huey was there, and he's like a Nat Geo guy. Brilliant storyteller, like, and he does like 7-year, 8-year longitudinal projects for like the New York Times and for Nat Geo, like on like alcoholism and suicide on Navajo reservations, like this classic mix of colonialism and mental health, and like it's like holy, how do you do that? And you know, like his stories from that stuff are just like what you do is you show up for 2 years without a camera, and you figure out how you can just be around and what's going on. You have your mind changed 10 times, and you know, go back and back with the writer, and then till you start figuring out how you can document and tell the stories really well.
That's empathy, right? Like you're saying about wanting to have your mind changed. Yeah,
absolutely. That's the thing. Like empathy, understanding like what it feels like for the other person, and what's actually not the thing the story you're imposing on them, but what is actually going on. And this is just I remember like we were in this venue in Brooklyn, and a bunch of us are like at the back of the room, like, you know, there's this Q&A going on, like Aaron's spoken and shown a bunch of work, and you know, he's like the last speaker, and he's taking questions from like, you know, from young wedding photographers, like 23-year-old whatever, who are still in their development, are still back at this other stage, and all incredibly valid questions, like when you're at that stage. And we're sitting at the back of this thing around this big marble bar, like off to the side. And I remember it was like me and like, you know, a friend was Ryan Muirhead, who's a fantastic film photographer, like friend of ours, who very nuanced, complex dude, you know, Jonas Peterson, Ollie Sansom, like we're all sort of on a similar wavelength about all these things we've been talking about, and we're sitting there, and we've just been blown away by Huey, just being like, who is this guy? Like, what the hell? And someone asked him, last question of the night, someone asked him, oh, what's a classic wedding photographer question? Oh, like what gear would you take on a job? And we were just like, like the audible groan. You're kidding me! Like, why would you ask this guy that? And Huey, so magnificent. He, this is a guy who I mean, out of one of his many projects, like he's the guy who got the Washington Post to print those, like at the Trump inauguration, to print those 3 portraits of the women. In the Obey guy did, and they printed them. They did this big fun, and he was at the heart of that people held up at the thing. They held up the newspaper. So like someone, what's on your bag? And he's just such a brilliant, empathetic understander of like whatever. He's just like, the goal is to just be invisible in the room, And so if it's a short story, if it's a thing that I've got to figure out real fast, if you go away to do a job for a week, I'll take a bunch of things, all cameras and lenses and stuff. He's like, but if the story's really important, if you've been on it for years and you've discovered whatever the thing is, he's like, it's like the bag of tricks of the photographer really don't matter anymore. He's like, if the story really matters, you've just got a camera and you've got like a 35mm lens, because when things are important, if you're good at your job, the tricks just have to fuck off. And we were all like, oh, because that just sums it up. Like, if the story's important, it's not tricks. There's no, and so many of the things in the tool bag of like people in our industry are tricks, about how to mostly about how to impose a visual style on someone else's story, mostly about how to impose the way you shoot a thing on someone else's story. And I understand that, because it's a hard job. You're shooting available light, you're walking into a room of strangers, you're trying to...
Stuff's happening.
Yeah, there's all these things happening, and you're just trying to figure out, I've got a storyboard in my head that I can pin the stuff on to somehow get to the end of the day and give these people a result. But at the same time, that so often turns into you imposing your grid onto this stuff. And what you miss is the real, actual, empathetic, important Aaron Huey level stories that are going on, which is just like, you know what? Sometimes the more confident you get, and the more confident you're in your ability to see light, your ability to mostly understand people, the more the tricks can fuck off, and you can just be in the room, and someone lets you be in the room. Like you can be in a situation where you're in the corner. You know the right how much presence to have. You know what times to be silent and what times to not be silent.
Because it's not so much that the tricks fuck off; it's that they move to the back of your mind. They're still there.
Yeah, it's just the tools that you've got. Yeah. But the bottom line is the understanding people. Understanding people is the number one skill that you've got. And understanding the situations that are playing out, and being able to be in a room where where a son who's getting married has a big argument with his mum, and they both break down in tears, and unlock all these parts of their relationship that are kind of unspoken, but that and that they're happy for you to be the invisible person in the room, is a level of empathy that they can feel, that suddenly tricks are not required, and even a good photograph isn't required. Just any photograph. Like, I don't know if you ever go to like the World Press photo stuff every year, as a competition, it's an interesting game, but the work that's on display is just usually a cream of some of the stories that have played out during the year, 100 or so images or whatever. And the stuff that's amazing is not necessarily incredible photographs, but it's the fact that someone was there, they had access, and they had enough empathy and understanding of the human condition to put themselves in the right place at the right time. And at the very moment when they knew that they wouldn't kill everything, they took the frame, or everyone was happy with them taking the frame. There's so much in common, and I don't want to be like, we're wedding photographers, and in some ways you just want to go, listen, you're not special, like what you're doing is this thing, but at the same time too, like, people in love are just fucking remarkable creatures. and you put them in a situation like having everyone around to celebrate their love, like in this once in a lifetime thing, this is some wild shit. You know, imagine that it's like a 1950s like documentary on Papua New Guinea, like rituals and whatever, you know, and you'd be glued to the TV, you know. Yeah. But it's people are incredible, and the things that people go through in their love are incredible, and the ways that it has played out in a family is incredible, and all of the stories, the love stories that are in a family. You know, love is a gritty, very practical thing, you know, and we like to think about it as being this Si Soph thing. But like we used to, before like the Australian marriage equality thing, you know, there used to be so many same-sex couples who'd come to New Zealand and get married because they couldn't get married in Australia. And to see, just as an example, to see that stuff go down where they've had to come to another country and bring all of their friends to celebrate, you know, who they are together, because they weren't allowed to do it in their home country. So the level of joy that you see amongst their people, the level of tears and family speeches and all these people, and we would see like these like incredibly stylish, amazing people getting married in places in New Zealand that would just be like, this venue isn't usually, it's a wedding venue. This venue isn't usually about. They don't give a shit. They're just like, we got online, we found a place, we booked it.
Booked some flights,
and we filled it up with all of the most glorious people in our world. And suddenly you just go like, I've shot at this venue 20 times. I've never seen what's going on here in this place. Look at this level of, and lots of that stuff is just, when you say people can't do a thing, and it's to do with love. Well, I'm just, like the rules aren't going to count. Yeah. It's going to happen, you know. I don't even know how we're talking about this. I think it's just the thing. It's easy to talk about wedding industry, but when you start to talk about people in love, just making it happen is probably the most captivating thing on the face of the earth. Like, because that's what, when you see like you think about some of the crazy refugee stories we've seen that have been beautifully shot, you know, and the stories beautifully told of like Syrian refugees crossing the border into Turkey, or like, you know, getting on like crazy rafts to Greece or North Africa. Like, these are people who, like, they are driven, like, because somewhere in the game they love someone and they want to take care of them. They want a better thing for their family, or their parents said, you have to go. You live in South Sudan and you will die in South Sudan unless you leave now and go north. You know, people smuggling their entire family out of Syria, and like this is a love story. It's the end result of a love story, because a love story starts with two people and then it turns into a baby, and it turns into a family, and the love, and this is, you know, and then you in an incredible way end up loving the person that they love, and it just grows and grows and grows. This is all love stories, and figuring out how you can tell them empathetically without imposing your grid on it is very hard, but it's also, you know, you're onto something when you're doing that. That's the story. That's the storytelling thing.
Epic. Nice, man. I guess to kind of just as a couple of things before we sort of start to wrap up the conversation.
We've got to wrap up.
Unfortunately.
These things can't be 5 hours long.
They can't be forever.
Also, the pandemic's going on.
Yeah. We could just stay in here for a month.
I think we're
self-isolating.
We're self-isolating, but we're a metre apart.
I guess there was a couple of things I wanted to I'd like sort of from the horse's mouth, I guess. Your use of film photography. I want to talk about that because it's this kind of thing that it's obviously very trendy, but what is it about analog, that process, the fact that there's all this nostalgia wrapped up into, like, what is it about the analog process that has kept you with it and that you feel you perhaps can't get from digital?
I think analog process is a very good title for all this stuff, you know, because I think that's what the thing is. To dial back a little bit, like, gone to shooting film through having a bunch of friends who were shooting film, but not because, you know, I always just thought it was horrendously expensive. But I got really frustrated with just batshit crazy color styles, you know, and just people moving a slider because they can move a slider, or things being super brown or orange or teal or whatever it is this year, and all sort of shit. And we, you know, you make your own work that is just regrettable, that you look back on in a year and you're just like, fuck, I'm so sorry. I'm going to reprocess everything and give you a new wedding. And all of the reference stuff that Soph and I were looking at that we loved, stuff like Fred Herzog and Stephen Shaw, you know, and, you know, Dorothea Lange, like, who we've already talked about, like, and you just go, shit, these colors are amazing. These tones are incredible. Like, why can't I get our stuff to look like that? And eventually you just go, I'll just shoot a few rolls of film, and then you get the result. If you've got a good lab and you've figured it out, you get the result back, and probably you've failed 90% of the time, but that 10% you're just like, that's what I want. That's the stuff I've been feeding myself. That looks like what I love, like what I sit in the morning going through books. That's it. Yeah. That's it. It has to be that. And so we started shooting like film, like a few years of film at a wedding alongside the other stuff we were doing, like solely as a color reference to just remind ourselves that to not get off track. And then started shooting like all of our personal projects on film, because it's you know, if you've got like this massive processing backlog of stuff, your motivation to go and shoot personal work, which is so vital. And I think there's this distinction between paid work and personal work in our game, whatever discipline you're doing, whether it's you know, making films or whether it's stills or whatever. No one knows what you got paid for a piece of work. No one knows if you got paid, if you didn't get paid. No one knows if you commissioned it yourself or someone else commissioned it. All they know is the work that you make. And so you have to have this approach to all the work you make, which is not uncompromising, and it's a horrible phrase, but which is like, I know what I want to do and I'm doing this deliberately. I think deliberate is better. But yeah, we started shooting all of that personal work stuff on film, because it's really nice to shoot it and put the rolls over there in a bag in the fridge and they go away to the lab, and it's a completely different process to all this other stuff that you're going through trying to do this other thing that you're doing, you know, different field of workload and delayed gratification and all this sort of stuff. But I think it started out as a color process thing, and then it turned into discovering so much about analog processes and how they work, pre-visualizing, you know, understanding what you know, not just being like making something out of nothing, as opposed to just kind of being an inherent harvester of shit, you know, seeing light in a certain way. And the seeing light thing, it's a bit of, I know it's a catchphrase and it's a bit horrible, but like no one, if you're shooting digitally, like no one meters. You don't meter. You don't walk into the room and think, what am I shooting? What's the light doing? What's going on? You're not, because the first thing you do is that, understandably, you've got this wonderful machine. The first thing you do is just see how does the camera see this? And the moment that you have this feedback loop of like, oh, look, I think this looks great. How does the camera see it? And if the camera sees it differently, or whatever the camera sees becomes now what you see. You look on the screen, this feedback thing happens, and your ideas develop based on what the camera sees. Whereas when you're shooting film, you have to see the light. You have to stop and look and go, how do I see this? What does this see? How do I figure out how I can make the camera see what I see? How, you know, like the feedback loop is very different, and the way that your ideas develop is very different. And both ways are valid. Like it's not like there is no such thing as one thing being better than the other. Both ways are valid. But what it's done for me and for both Soph and I is it's opened us up to just the pause. Everyone talks about film slowing you down. Is it? What it does, the big thing is that first pause, the 10 seconds where you walk into the room to just be like, what's the light doing? How would I meter this? What's the thing? What is the main event? How does the light fall? How do I, you know, and it's rather than there being like an algorithm made by a brilliant Japanese engineer that turns into a thing on the back of the screen that tells you this is how light works, you're left with this and this for at least 10 or 20 seconds before you put the camera up to even just see what the lens sees, you know. And that difference is massive. That difference is remarkable. And anyone that we've got into shooting film, we're always just like, hey, you know, like this is probably a ridiculous behavior, which is super expensive, and you're going to get this crazy old machine and you're probably going to fall in love with it. But the beautiful thing is that the feedback loop is non-instant. And so what happens is ideas develop inside you about how you see this and how you tell the story. Constraint. I mean, it's so obvious to say, like constraint is one of the key analog processes, and we're so used to living in a world where there is no constraint and everything's possible, that the beauty of constraint is a very focusing power. Like I always talk about being like and it's something that we shouldn't be afraid of. Art has always been constrained, and that's what's given it its power. But we tend to want free reign and green fields and all this sort of stuff. Best example of how constraint works is you take a handful of gunpowder, put it on the table, light it, you get some smoke, a little bit of flash, interesting. You constrain it with cardboard, and you got a firecracker, which is a hell of a lot of fun. You constrain the gunpowder with brass, and you've got a bullet, and you can change history. And so the more constraint that you get, the more power you get. And it's easy to forget that it's like if you've got like a card in your like a CF card in your camera, a 128 gig CF card, and you've got 2,500 frames, like you're just like, fuck, I'm harvesting the shit out of all of this. If you've got like a Rolleiflex, with a roller film in it, you brought one film, and you've got 12 frames that are all square, you're like, okay, I've got 12 frames. Like I need to absolutely understand what's going on here, who the people are, how this works, when the light's good, what the situation is, like, and I need to be absolutely razor sharp on when that moment happens. I've got 12 moments. What are they going to be? What might they be? How can I budget this out to figure out how this works? And it's suddenly your level of engagement goes from wandering around, but the thing is that like you equally get good stuff if you're just blazing away, I'm sure, but there's a certain sense of constraint which lends a power that you just go, I have to be in that place. I have to get myself in the room when this is happening, because I've only got 12 frames, and the constraint is a very different thing. And I think what happens is you learn these analog ideas, these analog rules, like about constraint, about pre-visualizing, about seeing the light, without the machine in front of you, and some of these ideas, and you bring them back to the digital world, and you're far, far better for it, and you can mix these two worlds up. But it's also like, as a reference of color and tone, it's remarkable. I'm always sort of like referencing films to people, like so many films, like look at anything that's nominated for an Oscar in a year, and at least half of them are shot on film. Because the directors and the cinematographers who are shooting these benchmark projects, like, enjoy the process, the analog process and the constraint. There's so many things. I mean, the color and tone is key, but also like the process that comes with it, because they're capturing performances that can't be gone on again and again and again and again. Bob Richardson, like, Tarantino's like DP, or like Deakins, like, and the people that these guys work with, like they enjoy the process of the analog process, because suddenly they go from being on a film set where it's just all data and you're generating data over and over again, to working in a confined situation where they can do 3 takes and all the actors know that this is a performance. This is not just documenting over and over again. It's not just a rehearsal. This is a performance. So we're gonna see how it goes. We've got another one. It's rolling. You hear the sound of the thing.
Yeah, you can hear it.
And it's that just absolutely changes what happens. And some people think that it changes it for the best, so that's why they do it.
I mean, the very first episode of the podcast I recorded with Jared from Perspectives, he was talking about constraint, and that like creativity comes from constraints. And yeah, it's true, and it's like we're talking right back at the beginning of our conversation around, like, there's too many options. If it's green fields, if your options are endless, you don't know where to focus. And it means that the task of documenting
overtakes the thing that you should be observing, the empathy that should be happening in front of you. It's like, constrain yourself, shoot on film, cool, or shoot on a crazy old weird old film camera if you want, or just take one lens to a wedding, or just like constrain the thing somehow, or only speak French. That's a terrible idea of constraint. But like, yeah, you can learn these lessons and you can put yourself in the situation, or like walk into the room and resist for 30 seconds. Resist the urge to put the camera up to your face. Resist the urge to ask the camera, what do you see? And just look at how the light falls. Look at everything yourself. Stop. You don't need to scout with a camera. It's a really great discipline to just visualize and think, how does this work? How does the space work? If you've been shooting for longer than a year, you know what your lenses look like. You know what the color temperature is like. Even if you don't know, you actually know. It's in you. You've figured it out, Just stop and think about what you know. And you'll be able to suddenly be able to figure the shit out. Even just like you can look at a thing, and even if you've never met it in your life, you can figure it out. You actually already know. It's not hard. But just stop and think, actually, what would, how much light is here? How would I actually meter this? I know how to do this. I've taken hundreds of thousands of millions of photos, and I've metered off the back screen of the camera, or I've metered with a light meter, or I've metered with your eye. You can figure it out. And I think some of that stuff is just going, you're a photographer. You're not an operator of this machine. The photographer is you. You can do it, So those are some of the things that you walk away from using analog processes going, shit, you walk a little bit taller, you have a bit more confidence. You go like, it's me, it's not the Canon Corporation.
Yeah,
it's not
you feel
Nikon,
agency over the tools rather than...
It's not Fuji, it's not whatever, it's me.
Yeah, love it. Awesome, man. All right, well, I've had an epic time with this. I'm going to have to go away and process a lot of this, but I guess to kind of
like cutting this down.
There is no cutting; it's going to be straight from start to finish. But I guess to leave me with some homework, and everyone else watching, I guess we've sort of talked about a few names along the way, but I guess what are some sort of some names for me to go away and start to like go down those layers on? Of inspiration and sort of.
I think a better way to even do it is, rather than inherit names from me, a better way is to figure out how to start paying attention. So stuff like if you see see plenty of films. I think that's key. See plenty of films. The thing we didn't talk about is calibration, is how your audience. We love to tell ourselves this lie that our audience is visually dumb, that we're the people who understand visuals. Like, you've got audiences who go and see, like if you've seen Dunkirk, it's just a regular blockbuster movie, and it's an absolute masterpiece of colour and tone, shot on 65mm Kodak Vision 3, by an incredible crew, and it's a masterful piece of light and storytelling and narrative, and that's just called entertainment. Films like Dunkirk are what calibrates our audience. They're seeing, it's on a par with them just going to all the great galleries of Europe and seeing every Renaissance master you can imagine. Like, this is what they're being calibrated by. The standard is very high, and so the stuff is out. You don't have to search for it; it's out there. Go to a film. If it leaves an impression on you, go the next day and see it again and take notes, because once you don't have to pay attention to the story anymore. Once the narrative is in you, and you're like, okay, I know what the wines are. I'm not on the edge of my seat. I'm just looking at how this visuals work. Go home and get on IMDb and look, who made this? Who are the people? What else did they make? Shit, if I like this, maybe I'd like that. Who's the DP? Like, who was the director? How did this stuff work? Who are the people who really actually turned this film from being an idea into a thing? That's a key thing. But obviously, like, there's some. If you write, we could just do handfuls of names, like I'm a big fan of Robert Richardson, Tarantino's DP, supposedly famously arrogant, but like shoots on film, and the work's incredible, like chase down Bob Richardson. And even if you don't like Tarantino films, which there's plenty of reasons to not like Tarantino films, his work is amazing. Like the work of that, the composition is incredible. Like the camera flow is incredible. The color and tone is
intense.
Yeah. And he's happy to leave mistakes in.
Yeah.
Like what's the one where they're all in the snowstorm in the thing?
The Deadly Eight or whatever.
Whatever is 8. Yeah.
Yeah. Whatever.
Yeah. Like there's plenty of stuff in that where there's crazy hot light spots coming into the house and it blows out the film.
Yeah.
And they leave it blown out.
Yeah.
Because they were like 3 takes and we got this incredible thing from Samuel L. Jackson.
Yeah. That's more important.
And it was like, this is far more important than this other thing over here. I would say like Bob Richardson and anything that Roger Deakins has had a hand in is mental. I mean, if you haven't seen like 1917,
I haven't yet. I need to.
It's a masterpiece, like an absolute masterpiece, and it's easy to go see films and fall into the idea of being a cinema goer, a watcher, which the first time you will be, but on the second time, your third time, you'll be like, how did they make this? How did they do that? Look at that! Holy shit! What the lighting? Look at this. And of course, there's a crew of 200 geniuses who are doing this. So it's not like no one's saying, hey, your stuff should look like this. But it's also like, why would you not use this? Feed yourself this.
Yeah.
Like it's going to go home and make you cry. So, like if you want to make good stuff, like feed yourself this. Like how the hell? And then in the same way in the photo game, you scale back, there's a bunch of like significant names, Stephen Shaw, like Fred Herzog, like even just the color and tone of these two dudes, Herzog's modern color is, Saul Leiter, like incredible work from a certain period, like in New York, which now, and these are people who, it's not just like go back to look at some old people's shit because for the sake of it, it's like, no, these people, like William Eggleston, these people have informed, anyone that you're looking at now is informed by these people. These people are the building blocks. If you're scrolling through on your feed on Instagram, you see something good, I promise you that 2 or 3 of those names are the building blocks of whether that person knows it or not. They're the building blocks of what they do. So you might as well feed yourself this stuff, And there's the outsider movement, like of artists who Diane Arbus, like shot some batshit crazy stuff, there's an incredible movement of people out of New York around that era, which is kind of like the early '60s, just making art and doing wild shit, And then Irving Penn, Richard Avedon, like these are people who are these are like the Beatles and the Hendrix of music. They're always in our music today. Like people are always referencing the stuff in our music today. It's the same thing with like if you love film, go watch a Kubrick film and see where did like whatever it is, the space one,
2001.
2001. Like the level of obsession with symmetry. And the colour and the shit, and you're just like, where did that come from? And then you look at Eggleston's work and you're like, that's where it came from. I see it. So all of these things are interconnected. And if you want to make good work, look at this stuff, because the people who are making good work right now are looking at this stuff, because it's kind of like it's the building blocks of our visual language. It's the stuff that calibrated mankind in the 20th century to think this is what stuff looks like. I mean, that's another reason why analog stuff is important, is because the color and tone, like how we calibrated our brains to color and tone in that key point of history when color magazines blew up and color films blew up and color TV blew up and the most incredible photographers in the world, their work every week is in Life magazine and Time magazine, all this sort of stuff around this era in the 50s and 60s and 70s. Like they're all shooting on a certain number of film stocks, and it calibrated us to just be like, that's what contrast looks like, that's what color looks like, that's what
skin tone looks like.
Yeah, that's what it looks like. Yeah. And so what, get into it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Awesome, man. I think that's a great place to leave it. And thank you so much.
Good times.
Coming to my little whare and hanging out and having a yarn.
Good luck with the pandemic.
Thank you, man. You too.
Wash your hands.
Stay strong. Yeah. 2 choruses of Jolene.
Jolene, that's much better because happy
birthday.
birthday.
Like, fuck that.
That's bullshit. Yeah.
Yeah,
Also,
no.
like happy birthday, and if you do the hip hip hooray, it's too long. Yeah. I think like, the pandemic thing, like everything else, it will pass, and people who are robust, as entrepreneurs and robust as makers and artists, it can't get you down. You get back up.
Yeah.
But there will be lots of people who will have their robustness tested, and this will be the thing that's the making of you. You look back in 10 years' time and go, shit, I figured out that I could get through it. That my passion to make stuff was bigger than COVID-19. But also that you discover that the empathy that hopefully you pour out on the people you make stuff for got poured out on you as well. So, yeah.
Right on.
Cool,
man. All right. That's going to do us. And, see you guys next time.